All right. First of all, you guys are lucky. The last session of the day, come on. We're going to talk about insurance fraud and insurance fraud referrals. This is exciting stuff. No, honestly, yeah, see, thank you, Monica. Hi, I am Greg Welker with NAIC. And to my left is Kyle McCullum. He's with the National Insurance Crime Bureau. And we have talked about doing a session like this for quite some time to show the collaboration and the great work that we do together between NICB and NAIC with the purpose of the fraud insurance referrals. So as far as what we're going to touch on, I will go ahead and just go through the learning objectives real quick. Want to give you guys an idea because we do want it to be somewhat interactive. So if you guys have questions, we want to take them. So what we're going to discuss basically indicate the sources and the pathways of insurance fraud referrals within the actual insurance industry. Describe how the referrals are processed, how the organizations utilize the information, and how NAIC and NICB work together with this. And also, a key one is to recognize the importance and accurate and timely data sharing that's done to combat against insurance fraud. So I am going to go ahead and turn it over to you, sir, and let you start us off.
Thank you, Greg. And hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. As Greg said, the last but best presentation of the day.
That's exactly right.
I hope. I'm Kyle McCullum with the National Insurance Crime Bureau. I'm their Vice President of Strategy, Policy, and Government Affairs. So really looking forward to this opportunity to have a conversation about insurance fraud reporting. And hopefully demystify it a little bit, get a better idea of what it is, why it's important, and really how it helps us in this room, helps you all as regulators, as part of the insurance ecosystem, insurance industry ecosystem. So really the key takeaway that I hope folks walk away today with is that fraud reporting is how we go on offense against insurance fraudsters. Fraudsters are coordinated, so we should be too. And really the simplest way to think of insurance fraud referrals, it's crime reporting. It's reporting suspected insurance fraud and suspected fraudulent insurance acts to the appropriate authorities. So we're going to start with Insurance Fraud 101. As I said, what is insurance fraud reporting? It's alerting state authorities to instances of suspected insurance fraud. So this can be a whole range of types of insurance fraud that we see out there. Staged accidents, inflated billing, predatory towing, contractor fraud, roofing fraud, post-catastrophic event fraud, staged slip and fall rings, medical provider rings, increasingly cargo theft. It's an area that NICB is getting a lot more intel and a lot more interest in from industry and our law enforcement partners. So it really can be a whole range of different types of fraud that finds its way to insurance commissioners and their fraud director partners through the fraud reporting and fraud referral system. So it starts with flagging suspicious claims for further investigation. And I take this a little bit back to my past life. Before I joined NICB, the balance of my previous career was on Capitol Hill, working on the Senate Judiciary Committee, doing some anti-terrorism work and terrorism financing work. So this might be similar. We'll say insurance fraud reporting is akin to suspicious activity reporting. We see that in the financial sector, looking at suspicious activity that might suggest money laundering activities or even illicit financing of terrorists. So similar type of concept, suspicious behavior that is reported to the appropriate authorities for further investigation and inquiry. So really, the main question that we get asked, well, why report? The easy answer, as I say to my son, like the Sunday school answer, is that in most states, it's the law. 45 states mandate insurance fraud reporting. We'll get a little bit more into the breakdown in a bit. But so yes, why report? Well, it's required by law. But I think we need to take into account sort of the intangibles, set aside the mandated part of it. Fraud reporting has tremendous fraud fighting and crime fighting value. Knowledge is power. And really increasing our collective knowledge of fraudsters, where they are, how they operate, is key. As I said at the get-go, fraudsters are coordinated. So the more that we all can be coordinated, the more that insurance commissioners' offices, departments of insurance can be coordinated, fraud directors can be coordinated, law enforcement and other strategic partners, NAIC and NICB, the more coordinated we can be against fraudsters, the better. And really, this all comes back to fraud is a completely unnecessary cost driver. It's something we can go on offense against and try to defend against. In an industry, in a world where there are so many variables and unpredictables, crime is something that we can go on offense against. And a key part of that is informing regulators and law enforcement of indicators of fraud so that we can together combat fraud. So we'll talk a little bit about the process. You'll see we have a little bit of a flow chart later that will show as well. The life of a insurance fraud report. Typically this starts as a claim that comes into an insurer, and the claims handler has some suspicions that there might be some fraudulent conduct here, something doesn't quite smell right. So that claim is then referred internally at the insurer to their SIU, their Special Investigative Unit, for further inquiry. The SIU conducts further inquiry, further investigation, determines there are sufficient indicators of fraud, sufficient indicators of a crime happening, that claim is then referred to a state commissioner under mandatory state fraud reporting laws. Part of what we'll go into today is, the fact that the NICB Fraud Bureau reporting system, NAIC's online fraud reporting system are connected. So you'll see here we talk about those referrals coming through the NAIC's online fraud reporting system, OFRS. But also we have referrals that go through NICB's Fraud Bureau reporting program, FBRP, that is directly linked to NAIC's OFRS system. It's a partnership that we're very proud of, a long-standing partnership. Two nonprofit organizations partnered together to bring more awareness to law enforcement, to bring more awareness to insurance commissioners about fraud trends and fraud actors. So once that referral occurs, then, oversimplifying here, but once that referral occurs, then we, anticipate further investigation of that referral and hopefully prosecution of fraudsters. Coordinated and sophisticated fraudsters. I think if you attended Commissioner Navarro's presentation this morning, you saw some indication of the complexity, the sophisticated nature and capacity of fraudsters across the country, the networks that they operate within. So what we're really doing here is flagging those instances of fraud for the appropriate authorities. To encourage fraud reporting, and again, getting back to SARS, suspicious activity reports in the finance sector, most states grant reporting immunities. So it typically in tandem, and the NAIC fraud prevention model also incorporates this, but typically you will see in tandem a mandatory reporting statute followed by an immunity statute. And really what that does, whether it be it on the state or federal level with the SARS equivalent, that encourages full and frank disclosure from insurers. It's a legal signal saying, do not fear. The information you report is confidential and it will not subject you to civil liability. So those immunity provisions are key. That's a key part of the patchwork, the legal framework of laws across our country that help strengthen our anti-fraud ecosystem and encourage a full and fulsome discussion about fraudsters and the tactics they use.
And absolutely. And the only thing I would, I guess, echo and drive home is he hit the nail on the head speaking about Commissioner Navarro and James Black's presentation this morning. Those situations, not that states aren't going to find things, but the insurance fraud referrals, we can't drive home enough how important those are to give states the indication of where things are taking place, trends, everything. And we'll get into a lot of that, but I just driving home how important fraud referrals are. Go ahead. Sorry.
Thanks, Greg. So talking about, really what does a successful, an effective framework for insurance fraud prevention include? Many of these items will look very familiar to you all who work in departments of insurance, but of course, step one being the adoption of anti-fraud programs. So ensuring that insurers have written anti-fraud plans. How are they going to detect, deter, and ultimately report insurance fraud that attacks their particular organization? Having those anti-fraud annual reports that outline what they are seeing, the activity that they engaged in to detect, deter, and report those instances of fraud. And of course, having special investigative units who are dedicated to investigating suspicious claims and suspicious activity for further inquiry. Really getting to the point of the fraud referral system and making sure that it is effective is having that, step two, having that mandatory fraud reporting statute. Really ensuring that all insurers are taking part in the fraud reporting system. The more information that flows through NAIC's system, that flows through the NICB Fraud Bureau reporting system, that gets to law enforcement, the better. Knowledge is power. I keep coming back to knowledge is power, but that is so true. The type of networks and tactics that we can see when we work together is key in uncovering the sophisticated networks out there that attack our state's consumers and the insurers that operate within those borders. So we see differences from state to state at times on exactly what is required. Sometimes there's specific requiring for arson, for example, motor vehicle or vessel type fraud, life insurance fraud, or prescription drug fraud. Some of those, kind of minor distinctions across states, but overall, particularly in the P&C industry where NICB is most prevalent, there is consistent reporting of P&C fraud to insurance commissioners. And then again, the third prong being civil immunity for that information sharing, encouraging a full and frank dialogue between insurers, insurance commissioners, and law enforcement. But I do want to add really maybe I won't call it this is kind of a three-legged stool here. Maybe the fourth leg or something that really wraps it all together is having a well-resourced fraud bureau, having dedicated investigators in each state, having dedicated prosecutors in each state who are focusing on insurance fraud. I believe we heard in Commissioner Navarro's presentation as well that oftentimes you can have an insurance fraud case served on a silver platter, but because of priorities in general jurisdiction prosecution offices, they're prioritizing the murder cases, other types of violent crimes. So having dedicated prosecutorial units is really key to making sure that we're, fully combating the threat that is out there. So this gives you a visual overview of the insurance fraud reporting legal regime, we'll say. And I'll say, fortunately, I think we're in pretty good shape. We're moving towards all 50 states having mandatory fraud reporting statutes. And again, the more that participate, the more that are part of this process, the more that compel that type of information sharing, so that we can work together, so that law enforcement and our strategic partners can work together in identifying fraudsters, the better. We have some states that are moving in the right direction. For example, right now NICB, I do, along with my team, I work on government affairs and government relations work for NICB. We're working very hard in Wisconsin and in Michigan right now with our partners there to strengthen the fraud reporting regime, the fraud reporting structure, such that we have mandatory reporting of insurance fraud in those states. And really, you know, I think another key takeaway today that I want to drive home is that we don't want states in any way retreating from this structure, because anytime you have a state sort of step aside or not take part in a fulsome fraud reporting structure, that, you know, as we see it, it puts an additional burden on other states to protect their constituents. You're not having a full line of sight on fraudsters and their activity. So when one state is not participating in this process, really that kind of puts the burden on neighboring states to have to step up and have deeper and broader visibility of fraud trends and fraud tactics. Just some top line examples of what member insurers, NICB member insurers, and others are looking at as indicators of fraud. So, you know, whether it's at the claim handler level, whether it's the SIU, they're looking for these various indicators, these various suspicious activity indicators to determine whether to proceed with this, whether to sort of roll this claim over into a fraud referral. Inconsistencies in the claim or application, lack of documentation or evidence, unusual claim patterns, delays, overly cooperative or uncooperative claimants, exaggerated or unnecessary treatments, prior history of claims or prior history of fraud, altered or suspicious documents. I'll mention that in a bit, but we're seeing NICB and our intelligence analysts at NICB are seeing a very significant uptick in synthetic documents, synthetic IDs, and the use of fake documents to commit fraud. And, you know, am I the first one here to say AI? Has AI been mentioned this?
A couple of times, here or there.
So AI is only going to make that tougher, more difficult. You know, it's going to empower fraudsters to use synthetic IDs, synthetic documents, or voice spoofing. All of the different indicators that we typically would look for will be more difficult as we move further towards AI adoption and integration. So, so those are just some sort of top line examples of fraud indicators. But as mentioned earlier, I want to give a general idea of that life cycle, that flow of a fraud referral or a fraud report as it moves from the insurer to the state. And so if you kind of imagine off to the left of the screen, you have your claims handler who then, you know, again, something doesn't quite smell right. They refer that claim to the SIU, to the Special Investigative Unit, who then makes that determination, that internal determination based on training, based on work with their in-house legal counsel, that particular claim has risen to a level of fraudulent indicators that it should be reported under mandatory reporting statutes. So that fraud referral then can take a couple different pathways before it reaches an insurance commissioner and or law enforcement. You sound like you were going to jump in there.
No,
okay.
I'm not. I'm just agreeing.
So, for example, it can go straight to the state. And we see that, for example, with consumer reports of fraud. Many state insurance commissioners' websites have like a direct report of fraud type portal. So a consumer can log on and do that. Consumers can do that through NAIC. They can do that through NICB as well. So there's that possibility to go straight to the state. And I know I don't want to steal Greg's thunder. He'll talk a little bit about, talk more about NAIC's OFER system, but a referral can go straight from the insurer through OFERs to the state insurance commissioner or state fraud bureau. And then of course, NICB's close partnership with NAIC. Our members, we represent well over 80% of the P&C industry. They can come directly to NICB, submit that fraudulent referral in a one-stop shop. Our system is connected directly to NAIC's OFERS system, and then that referral is then directed on to the state. I'll give you a little more background on NICB in a bit, but that gives NICB, through our partnership with NAIC, really unmatched and unique visibility into fraud trends and fraud tactics nationwide, a multi-state, multi-carrier perspective and vantage point over fraud. And then in a few instances, some fraud referrals can go straight to NICB and then straight to the state. So there's a few limited instances of that where we work directly with a state fraud bureau and members can come straight to us, report, and it goes directly on to the appropriate law enforcement partner. So with that fraud referral 101, I'll kick it over to my partner, Greg.
All righty, thank you, sir. So we are 4:30 in the afternoon. I want to make sure everybody's paying attention. Who has heard of the NAIC's online fraud reporting system? Please raise your hand. Okay, fair enough. That's good. And thank you for paying attention. Even though I do see that there's a lot of people that already know that, I'm looking for people who don't. So this is good. To summarize this, you guys can read that. It's up there. That is exactly what it is. But the online fraud reporting system, OFERS, OFRS, many names. Bottom line, it is a repository of suspected fraud, just like it is. It's a reporting system that goes to the participating states, excuse me. That data comes from, like Kyle was saying, from NICB, and I would like to say we were probably 96% of what we get is probably from NICB, if not 94 to 96%. We also get it from NHCAA, National Healthcare Anti-Fraud Association. Nobody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 99% that's correct. We also get it from consumers, industry, also to our actual website, and we will go into that a little more. That's just the gist of what OFERS is. So it was actually created in 2005. We worked with the NAIC staff, worked with the Anti-Fraud Task Force, state regulators there, and industry to create this online fraud reporting system. And it took off from the get-go. It was determined that this is something we had to have. We then implemented it with NICB, NHCAA to get that data received back and forth. And we also have a standardized OFERS form. Basically what that does is that is distributed to, well, let me backtrack. That is used to put the information in there, and that form itself is then utilized to give to the state. So along with the data itself that we get, and that the states get, excuse me. So basically once they feel like this is a case that's worthwhile, all that data is in there, they can see it. It is not, and this is something that I would be remiss if I didn't say, OFERS is not a case management system. And I do think that sometimes there's some confusion in that and that it can be utilized. It is not. It is a referral program for states to realize this might be something that we need to investigate. This might be an issue. This might be a trend. Like Kyle was saying, it indicates us on where we need to go. The data is not owned by the NAIC. It is confidential information. It's owned by the states. And we continue to work with task force members, everything to keep, number one, to keep that data confident, but also to see if there's anything, updates, enhancements, anything that we need to make it better, give you guys what you want. In 2018, we actually had a rewrite. Rewrite. I want to make sure I say this right because there are certain staff in here that will redesign that. So the redesign is actually, and the reason I say it's a redesign, not a rewrite, is because it was given to me by NAIC staff. It is the same house, a new coat of paint. We had to bring it up to scale with all the securities and everything that we needed. Some of the things that we actually did, the submission process, what we display, The turning of reports, like I said, gives us an idea. It also, a big one was to include a new enhancement of attachments, which is it's a big step in the right direction, and we're still, working out any quirks that we have with that to give the states exactly what they need. And lastly, as far as what do we do with the referrals that we get? What's the process? What do we collect? What is it used for? So we collect geographics, we'll collect fraud types, details associated with that. But again, I'll reiterate, it is a referral system. So when there is more information that a state might want, they will have to contact the individuals if necessary to get more details on what is needed. But that information is delivered through NAIC's PIC alerts, and they're pushed through on email. We also have a web service, and those web service, we've got what's called Store Report, and then we've also got Get Report. So to let you know, Store Report is how we get the information from NICB and NHCAA. Get Report is how it's distributed to the states. Just to let you know. And what is also used with that data, so we've got SBS, state-based systems, the NAIC, case management system through them. Some states have created their own case management system, or there's also vendors out there for a third party that they would also use for the case management system themselves. So we will get into more, but that is the brief overview on OFERS, and I will go ahead and kick it back to you.
Thanks, Greg. I want to move next to just giving a top-line overview of who NICB is and our sort of placement and central role in the fraud reporting system. So if you'll bear with me, a little bit of a history lesson and overview, but again, so we are the National Insurance Crime Bureau. We are a nonprofit organization. We're the premier nonprofit organization dedicated to preventing, detecting, and deterring insurance crime and insurance-related fraud. We have a long history, well over 110 years, going back to our inception as the National Auto Theft Bureau. So if there's any former law enforcement folks in the room, you may have worked closely with the National Auto Theft Bureau. Many years ago, in the early 90s, we merged to become the National Insurance Crime Bureau. But our history is in vehicle theft. It's the insurance industry coming together, a public-private partnership, to try and push back against vehicle theft and vehicle fraud. That was really our inception. And so we have, over the years, really solidified our position at the intersection between the insurance industry, law enforcement, and regulators to provide key information and that vantage point that really no one else has. And that's why we're really proud of our partnership with NAIC and being able to provide some operational and investigative and intelligence analytical muscle to this great system that we have in working with state insurance commissioners and making sure that, that we have full visibility over fraud trends. So, some of NICB's history, we were the original hub for VIN information, so for vehicle thefts and VIN information. So we helped solve the Oklahoma City bombing. We had the VIN information that helped uncover and solve the bombing and lead investigators back to Timothy McVeigh. We provided the VIN information and records that helped solve the World Trade Center bombing as well. So we have core data assets that we really use in our partnership with law enforcement, federal, state, and local across the country. In our position between the insurers and law enforcement, that really helps strengthen our collective fight against fraudsters. So we have just over 400 employees, many of whom are former law enforcement themselves, former investigators, state, local, and federal law enforcement who work for our organization that really help add muscle and investigative assistance to our members, to state fraud bureaus, and to law enforcement across the country. So I say all that just to kind of lay the groundwork for NICB's Fraud Bureau reporting program, which is really a core program of our organization. And that's where we are directly aligned and in partnership with the NAIC's OFR system. So the Fraud Bureau reporting program is really a force multiplier of fraud reporting in the country. So in 48 states, NICB helps facilitate fraud reporting directly to the state insurance commissioners. What that does, that gives NICB that investigative and analytical vantage point. So we're able to see the fraud trends, see the questionable claims activity across the industry, multi-state, multi-carrier, and identify complex and sophisticated crime rings across the country. I heard the term in the previous presentation just before us, death by 1,000 cuts. That's what NICB works to identify. Fraudsters are coordinated. They are attacking member companies. They're attacking insurers. They're attacking consumers across the country in a very sophisticated manner. And through our perspective, through our vantage point, we're able to uncover them. Last year alone, NICB uncovered a little over 1,600 new organized crime rings in the United States. We're looking both domestic and global, but over 1,600 new crime rings that were directing their activity towards the insurance industry and the consumers of the insurance industry. And so that's what makes our partnership so key. NICB and NAIC together, we're partners in alerting states to insurance fraud. And I think it's really a unique partnership. Two nonprofits coming together with a joint mission of protecting against insurance fraud and insurance crime. Our systems are integrated to streamline the fraud reporting process while also increasing visibility over trends and tactics. So for NICB members, really what that provides is a one-stop shop for them to interact with the NAIC's OFR system, for them to get their fraud referrals through to the appropriate investigative authority, the appropriate fraud bureau. So it's a time saver, it's a resource saver, it's a one-stop shop through our organization. We also provide investigative assistance on those fraud referrals. So those referrals that come through the NICB submission process that go through the OFR system that ultimately reach the fraud bureaus, the insurance commissioners, NICB provides investigative assistance on those. And we triage those cases through help with our strategic partners. We provide investigative support in the field on those cases and really help our members push back against fraudulent claims. And again, that gives us that unmatched vantage point across the entire industry. So the question becomes, fraud is reported, now what? That ultimately is, once that report ends up in the insurance commissioner or fraud bureau's office, or an AG's office. Different states have different structures. Some states, it is upon the Attorney General's office to receive and investigate reports of insurance fraud. But what they do is they assess the case, they further investigate if necessary, and they determine whether or not to proceed with a prosecution. But because we are so closely partnered with fraud bureaus, with insurance commissioners, with investigators and prosecutors across the country, we know that not all fraud referrals are created equally. So even though there is mandated fraud reporting, that doesn't necessarily equate to mandated high-quality fraud reports. So we again, I've used this term multiple times. We sit at that intersection between the industry and regulators and law enforcement. So we're very respectful and we value that position, and we work very hard with our members to improve their submissions, their questionable claims submissions, so that they're providing full and fulsome narratives of the fraud to make sure that on the receiving end, the fraud bureaus, the insurance commissioners, the attorneys general, they receive actionable reports, actionable intelligence that they can move forward and try and combat the fraudsters that are attacking our industry and constituents in our states. So really the fraud directors, in the discussions I've had, it's been a bit of, well, help us help you is what I hear. High quality referrals lead to high quality results. What was the lie? How do you know it was intentional? Why is the fraud material to the claim? And to attach the evidence that you have. Greg, you mentioned attachments. That's something that we've been working really closely together, our two systems and operations, to make sure that insurers can submit those attachments through our two connected systems to the fraud bureaus and insurance commissioners on the receiving end, so that evidence gets to where it needs to be to help in those investigations and prosecutions. And again, coming back to my theme from the get-go, it's not just compliance, it's not just a statutory mandate. Fraud reporting is how we all join the fight, how we collectively fight together against fraudsters and trends that are harming our industry, harming our constituents, harming consumers. It's how we all fight together against those trends and tactics.
Formattings.
What's that?
See, the formatting's off.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Formatting notwithstanding, I hope what you're gathering is the through line that fraud reporting, high quality fraud reporting in particular, but fraud reporting, mandatory fraud reporting, leads to impactful investigations, successful outcomes, and ultimately protecting consumers. I spend most of my time on Capitol Hill. That's kind of my familiar neighborhood. But I always say to lawmakers, insurance fraud requires somebody going through an insured individual to victimize, whether they're targeting our parents, our grandparents, predatory tow, vehicle theft. Somebody is being taken advantage of so that they can reach the insurer. So ultimately, fraud reporting benefits consumers, protects consumers against fraudsters, and helps lower costs.
You mind if I say something?
Yeah.
And just really one of the things I wanted to say, with my time here at the NAIC, obviously in working with NICB, and I think Kyle could probably agree with me on this one, insurance fraud hasn't always been something that is publicly talked about. It's always been a little bit more of a hush-hush. We handle it internally, and we'll take care of things. One of the things over the years that I've seen happen with the Anti-Fraud Task Force and the working groups is bringing public awareness, and this drives home. I know this isn't exciting, and one of us could get up and dance, we would, but this is important, and insurance fraud, having that information out there and getting that out there and having consumers aware to help us get those referrals too is important. So, sorry, I just felt like I needed to say that.
No, agree 100%. So just a quick overview. Referrals help protect consumers from fraud. We see this across the country. Insurance commissioners that NICB has worked closely with, working closely with members of NAIC, working with our law enforcement partners. Ultimately, we see fraudsters get prosecuted when this system works the way that it should. Bringing fraud to the attention of law enforcement, bringing fraud to the attention of insurance commissioners, making sure that we are all together fighting back against these trends and these tactics. So just, for example, I'll mention in New York, for example, NICB worked very closely via a fraud referral on a $31 million slip and fall scheme that our agents helped uncover, working with law enforcement there in New York. Ultimately working with the United States Department of Justice that led to a takedown of a $31 million slip and fall ring. So these are real cases. These are real fraudulent schemes. These are complex operations that increasingly, as our CEO just testified to before the Senate this summer, they are increasingly international in scope. So the more information that we can work to pull together as an ecosystem, the more armed we will be in our fight against fraudsters. And really, getting back to when I showed that map earlier, fraud reporting benefits every state. We see, for example, a fraud report that came to light in Iowa that uncovered a fraudster who was operating out of Illinois. Somebody who was going around and basically disguising themselves as an insurance adjuster who was doing roof repairs. He would submit a claim to the insurance company. Ultimately, that check would go to him. He would forge the signature and cash out. A fraud report, a fraud referral, helped uncover this pattern of conduct, ultimately leading to a nationwide arrest warrant. This individual was arrested on Treasure Island, Florida, living the high life, as we saw similar conduct in Commissioner Navarro's presentation earlier. Living the high life on Treasure Island, Florida, until he was brought to justice thanks to a robust fraud reporting system and investigative resources. And so what do these fraud referrals really bring to light? Again, it's the trends, it's the tactics. We're seeing this in many different areas of our industry, in many different fraud schemes. I'm just going to briefly highlight for now so that we have time for questions. Predatory towing. NICB, with our questionable claims submission process, our partnership with the NAIC, our fraud referral system, and our fraud bureau reporting program, we've seen an 89% increase in questionable claims activity related to predatory towing between 2022 and 2024. That actually led to a great conversation on the Today Show earlier this year. The Today Show ran a piece specifically on predatory towing fraud and how consumers are being victimized by predatory towers across the country in various urban areas. This particular piece focused in on Los Angeles, but Chicago has been historically a hotbed for predatory towing activity. And this QC data, this fraud referral data that NICB in partnership with NAIC, that visibility that we were able to obtain, that data helps compel conversations and ultimately public policy to push back against that fraudulent conduct. So earlier this summer, NICB, as part of a coalition, a broad coalition of industry and consumer groups, successfully helped push across the finish line some strong reforms in Chicago, in the city of Chicago, to push back against predatory towing. And one that is so recent that didn't even make it on the slide here yet, but NICB, we just released our identity theft threat assessment. This is our latest intelligence report on questionable claims activity, and we're predicting that by the end of 2025, we will see a 49% increase in insurance crime related to identity theft. So our questionable claims activity, our data in partnership with the NAIC, our fraud reporting system, a strong and robust fraud reporting system, gives us that visibility, and we are able to provide that intelligence to our members, to our law enforcement partners, and commissioners. And this is just to wrap up what I was pointing to earlier about how that trends information, that intelligence that we obtain through this system really helps drive strong results on the public policy side. So with that, I know Greg's got some more to talk about on the OFERS enhancement side before we turn it over for questions. So
yeah, thank you.
Over to you, sir.
So what we wanted to do really, when we had talked about enhancements, and we thought the flow would be well, as I mentioned before, the great work done by the Anti-Fraud Task Force and Commissioner Navarro and the working groups. And that's where the, I don't want to say the buck stops, but that's who I work with and who NAIC works with for any kind of enhancements, updates on what's going on and what is taken, delivered, et cetera, in OFERS. And that process is important because a lot of people don't really know how things get changed. So just as an example, if a industry, if a state, doesn't matter, has something they'd like to change in OFERS, and it could be simple as a field that they don't feel is necessary anymore that's collected, or a field that's not there that is necessary that needs to be collected. Step one would basically be contact the NAIC help desk. There is a NAIC user form. It's an enhancement form that is used internally to begin with. And I should also say, not only the help desk, I can be contacted and I can submit that for an individual, for a state, for an industry. So the form's completed. From that point, what happens is the Anti-Fraud Technology Working Group evaluates that. So regulators are in a room on a call, and we also have industry as well. We'll have NICB there. We'll invite NHCAA, anyone that matters, and we will discuss those enhancements, and we'll determine on, first of all, on that level, whether this is something that the group agrees that they want or not. We also will discuss with internal NAIC staff. Is this an easy lift? Is this a lift that's going to take time, potentially a budget review, et cetera? So that is that piece. Once the working group decides we want this, it then moves to the task force. And that's where Commissioner Navarro comes into play, because I go to him, he understands the situation, and then we talk about it at the task force level. Once adopted there to move forward, it then goes to D-committee. So we go through the process, D-committee, it's approved there, and then eventually it'll be through the full NAIC membership, and that enhancement is then put into play. I just felt like that was important to understand the process, because things don't just get changed because somebody wants to. There's a reason, there's discussion, and it's done in a way that's going to help enhance the process. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to no, you're fine. That's just to add on to that. Our systems are connected. They're integrated, but they are, it is the NICB system. It is the OFERS system. So we operate our enhancements. We adopt our enhancements separately, but we do it from an IT perspective separately, but we do it together in unison through our monthly dialogue meetings. We're making sure that what we do on the NICB side translates to the NAIC side and vice versa, to make sure that that partnership continues strong and robust, and that we don't, that all we do is working to enhance and not retract from our great fraud referral system. So
absolutely, and to echo on to that as well, it is not just NAIC and NICB. Yes, we are meeting monthly, but like we had said before, NHCAA, we've also had chair of the Anti-Fraud Technology Working Group join us. So it's not just closed setting. We want feedback, and a lot of those calls are open when they can be to have those discussions. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just to close up with the theme that I've repeated throughout this afternoon, but this fraud reporting system, this fraud reporting ecosystem, again, it's really how we go on offense against fraudsters who are targeting insurers and the consumers who are customers, our constituents from state to state. This is how we go on offense. So welcome any questions. I know we're kind of up on time, but thank you all again for being here, and the floor is open.
Keep it down, guys. You sure there's no question? All right. Well, thank you all very much for coming to join us. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. It's good.